just introducing Ali, who is currently our CalCities League president. And Ali was here a few months back, I think in April, and we didn't have enough time to have our full discussion. So he's generously agreed to be here again. And we're just going to have kind of an informal discussion about some of the things that we've talked about here. And Ali has been, has agreed to, if he can't respond to some of our concerns today, to take it back and get answers for us. So, and get back to us with some responses. So we understand that, Ali, you will help us with, you know, what you have available, but the value of you taking it back, sharing our concerns and bringing back additional or sending further information would be wonderful. Thank you. So Ali, I'm going to start by giving you the floor. You had said to me, we ran into each other at the policy committee in, where was that?
Pomona.
Pomona, yes. And we didn't talk details, but you said you had something that we would want to hear, to share. So I'm looking forward to that. So I'm going to give you just 5 minutes because we don't want to run out of time. And I know that there are those who will want to speak and ask questions also. So if you can use 5 minutes to tell us what you'd like us to know, that would be wonderful.
First of all, thank you so very much for inviting me back. Yes, last time was a short time. I did not know the time allocation that I had to make. So once again, thank you so very much. Secondly, I always want to start my conversation with League's mission statement, which is to expand and protect local control through education and advocacy to enhance the quality of life of all Californians. And the reason I start my conversation, any speech, is because that is the mission of the League of California Cities, and I really live and by that mission. And so I just want to put that out there. Secondly, what happened in Long Beach at the General Assembly, I did not go home and slept well. And that was the case with many. And there was a feedback that was given in just after the assembly as well, that this did not go well. And I fully agreed with everyone, and it did not go well. So I took it very seriously, among many other things, but specifically what happened at the General Assembly. There were quite a few things. Just logistically, I must say that the timing of General Assembly really on Friday, starting the General Assembly at 12 noon or 11:30, right, lunchtime, and many who are at that time wanting to leave, it's a Friday, they've worked through Wednesday, Thursday, it's a time just to, you know, take off, and many come from across California. So it did not make sense to really not listen and have a reparative General Assembly time. So we went back to, as a board, this was a discussion that occurred. And this assignment was given to the governance committee to see how things can be improved and not have the same or similar experience at General Assembly, especially logistically. So the governance committee did take time, at least a couple of meetings, to come back to the board, and the board finally did approve that the General Assembly will be now held in the morning versus 12 at noon. So this coming conference, that's going to be the annual conference from 20th through 22nd, General Assembly is going to be held in the morning of Friday. And it will be held exactly at from 8:30 to 10:30 a.m.
This meeting is being recorded.
And the resolution committee will be held a day prior, which is going to be on Thursday from 1 to 2:30 p.m. So there's a significant change that has occurred basically on the feedback and so many things that happened during that General Assembly. So I wanted to share that. Earlier, I was asked to come back. I specifically didn't want to come back because the process was going on and the board approval was taking place and the governance committee was working on it. So I wanted to come back and share this news specifically that this is what has transpired and happened. And I do want to thank some of the members who are present to give that feedback and some who spoke with me personally and also spoke with other board members as well as the staff as well. So thank you for your feedback, but to report back to you, this is what has transpired. So resolution committee 1 through 2:30 Thursday, and then early morning from 8 to 10 o'clock is going to be the 8:30 to 10:30 is going to be the General Assembly. Then we'll have the other concurrent sessions afterwards and the lunch and so on and so forth. Agenda will be going out soon, right after the board meeting that will occur this coming week, and the board more than likely will be giving the approval for that as well.
All
So
right.
that's kind of my report at this time, and I'm open to any questions that I can answer. I'll be happy to. Unfortunately, a staff member could not join. Some of the technical procedural issues came through, but I'll be happy to have those questions take back and ask staff to get back with answers. But this is a big change, which I just wanted to share with each and every one. And with that, I turn it back to you, Julie, and I'm open to any comments, questions, or concerns.
Great, thank you. I'm going to remind everyone to please mute yourselves. If you're not speaking, please mute. There are quite a few that need to mute. And Rick, would you keep an eye on that? And I'm not co-host, so I couldn't do the muting. So thank you for sharing that, Ali. And for those of you who weren't at the conference, many of us were there, and we followed the procedure for asking for a resolution from CalCities to support our Neighborhood Voices initiative. And a lot of us worked very hard to follow the process and do what was necessary to get that on. And there are many of us on this call right now that were very frustrated with the process. So I think there might be a couple people. We're going to not spend too much time on this topic because we've got a bunch more, but I'm going to start by asking anybody who wants to give feedback about that experience or because while I appreciate that the scheduling need, I think that's a wonderful change, but I don't think that fully covers what our frustrations and what we were up against. So Anita, you were there, right? So is that what you're going to talk about?
Yes, I was there. And first I want to thank you, Ali, for bringing this back through the process and getting that change made. I think it will be very helpful. I think what Julie's referring to and the frustration that we experienced was that having thought we were following the right procedure to get this in front of the full assembly with the petition process that we used, we were surprised that the resolutions committee appeared to have the authority to say, no, this cannot go forward to the General Assembly. So I just want to clarify, is that still in the way things are, or has that now either been clarified or changed? Because it seems that the whole petition process is to allow a broad segment of the membership to bring something to the full membership, the full assembly, when they think it's really important to do that.
Thank you, Anita. Absolutely. Ali, I want to first assure everyone I was on the floor. I was one of the voting delegates, and Ali was advocating on our behalf. And the procedure, who was it that that didn't allow us to even have the discussion or answer questions. So a vote was taken without information, accurate information. It was an exercise in futility that Ali was really there and making an effort on our behalf to give us the opportunity to talk. But the process was something that as elected officials, we found hard to believe, because certainly it would never have been allowed in any other city and any of our processes to do what was done to us, to stifle our voice after we had followed all the procedures and done everything we knew to be right, but we never were given the opportunity to address the group. So I know that wasn't your fault, Ali, and I please don't feel like I'm in any way criticizing your involvement, because I saw you trying to, the parliamentarian, that's it. I saw you trying to say to the parliamentarian that we should have an opportunity to speak. I know you were frustrated also, but really that's if the parliamentarian has the authority to do what was done to us, many members, how many signatures had we gathered? Over 100 or something. There was significant representation there, and that had supported our putting this resolution forward, and we were not allowed a single word to the elected body that was there. So I think what I would ask is that we look at the process again. It was not a democratic process. None of us would have gotten away with that in our communities. So I'm going to give a couple more people an opportunity. Margaret, you were there. Jovita was there. Mike Griffith, you're nodding your head. Please speak to this, because I know you have a little bit of input. John, you were there. Peggy was there. But we don't want to, again, take our entire meeting with this, as much as I think it's important. Margaret, try and be brief. Go ahead.
I will. Yes, Ali, thank you so much for advocating for us. And I know you listened to me. I vented because I'm still reeling being called because I'm white. I can't stand up for Black people that are going to be abused by these bills. But anyway, I do appreciate the new change for the timing, because we've been saying that for years. You know, people are catching flights and blah, blah, blah. But the real problem was we were shut up, and we worked our tails off getting those signatures. And the parliamentarian, I would assume, is a non-elected person. Can somebody answer that? It's not an elected person.
Mm-hmm.
Not okay. And that is one of the things that I've had. And you guys know I've been a long time. I was on the board when I was president of the LA division. And one of the things that I've experienced over the years, and I know this can't happen overnight, but we have staff members from cities, and their input is valuable. They have knowledge that we need, but they are voting members. And I have seen this where we work our tails off on something that's going to benefit or not benefit our residents. And that's who we serve. The people are the boss in this country. And when they get the staff may have a different perspective. If it's something that's going to bring money into projects that's going to be, you know, keep their job, they're thinking differently than we are thinking about Mary Jones, our disadvantaged resident. So we really need to think about that. If there could be some kind of a thing where if it's not controversial, yes, staff can vote. But if it's something that's really controversial, they shouldn't have the same.
Margaret, I'm so sorry, but Margaret, let's wrap up, because
What?
you're not. Go ahead.
I said that was my rant, and I'm done. Did you hear what I said?
Thank you. You absolutely captured so much of what we want to say. Before I give you a chance to weigh in, Ali, I'm going to let Jovita and Mike go, and then we'll hear some feedback from Ali, and then we really should move on from this one. Jovita, go ahead.
Hi, I'll make it quick. Ollie, thank you so much for being here. I know this is your family day, so thank you for taking that time. Thank you for pushing this forward. I know you were a big part of doing that and changing the process, and I really appreciate you for that. I think piggybacking on Margaret, I'm not understanding why non-electeds are on the resolutions committee. There's a different sense of responsibility when you're an elected versus a non-elected. So I think we need to relook at that on the members there. And I also, there was a breakdown at the resolutions committee where basically it got punted back to do everything we had already done. I wish we would have had some time to speak to that, because I think there's people on both sides. There's people that want local control and there's people that don't. They want to build, and that's fine. But I think that there's some people who harpoon the conversation and gaslit people into thinking we hadn't had these conversations in committee, which was a little disheartening, because it's like you're putting us in this hamster wheel instead of
Right.
just getting to the end. So that was my only comment, but thank you so much. I know you're working hard behind the scenes, and I know you're getting the hits on our behalf. So thank you.
Oh, Rita, great comments, because the hamster wheel, absolutely. I had been on those hundreds of hours of policy committee, and yet it was presented to the voting membership that this should go back to committee, because implying that it hadn't already been addressed ad nauseum at the committee. And that was just not true. And we were not given an opportunity to respond to that. So Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Julie, and thanks, Ali, for being here so people can talk with you on this issue. I know you and I have talked personally on this specific issue recently, and I thank you for that personal call you did reaching out to me about this change. So yes, it's great that the change is made to the General Assembly time. That's certainly a step in the positive direction, and we all thank you for that. What I didn't hear from you, and I think Anita and Margaret both touched on it, was if a petition resolution were to come forward with the new General Assembly times, the big issue that a lot of us had still was not just the time of the General Assembly, but the fact that there was no ability for the petitioners to say a word about the petition resolution that was successfully brought forward. And so has there been any move forward in the CalCities group to change that process, so that if a petition resolution does make it to the floor, will those petitioners have an opportunity to speak?
Okay, so what I would, I'm going to give you a chance to respond to what Mike just asked, but there was also a good question asked by Rudy, and that is really, was the parliamentarian procedure accurate? And I believe it was. I mean, he was going through the book, and Ali was trying to give us the opportunity to speak, and the parliamentarian was not allowing it. So what that tells us is that just changing the time of the General Assembly certainly does not change the procedures that caused the problem. And so the next annual conference is rapidly approaching. It is, for all of you who haven't yet booked your hotels, September 20th through the 22nd in Sacramento this year, NorCal. I always like going to SoCal. It makes it a little funner adventure. Sacramento I can do in a day. But, you know, is there an opportunity to look at, and quite frankly, I think we all feel that there needs to be an acknowledgement that what took place shouldn't have happened. And if we're not making an effort to correct that, we're not acknowledging it. Ali? You're muted.
So once again, thank you for the comments and questions. So let me start off with the fact that with regards to a resolution committee, members on resolution committee are elected body. There may be a few who may not be, but the resolution committee is that is held on Thursday from 1 o'clock to 2:30. That represents on that body are members who are members of CalCity and are from north, south. There's a large number of members who are present, close to about 40, I believe. Don't take that word a number for I believe that's the number, but there are quite a few members who are present, and they're pretty much all elected officials who are present. They basically, that majority, whatever the majority vote is, I don't control that, you don't control that, nobody, whosoever is the majority, or whosoever, when I say whosoever, whatever the resolution is, whether it is A, B, or C, it passes, it goes to a General Assembly. As simple as that. And it's a simple majority. It is not a super majority, it's a simple majority that goes to the floor of the General Assembly. And again, the General Assembly, again, whatever the majority is certainly taken into bylaws and so on and so forth, or whatever. So I just want to emphasize the fact that resolution committee takes into account whatever it is as a majority, and General Assembly as well. If there's not a majority, then then Mike, you can't do much, I can't do much, or anybody else can't do much. I'm not picking Mike as you, but I'm just sharing this that, I was presiding on that General Assembly. And by the way, the next president should be presiding the General Assembly, but this time I'm presiding. That's another thing that in order to change, I will be presiding this General Assembly. It will not be the incoming president. Usually it is the incoming president, but now I will be presiding this General Assembly. It would have been Dan Para, but still I will be presiding because of the changeover and all that. So I'm not sure if I answered the question, but to kind of really share with you, Resolution Committee, the notes that I made, is an elected body. There may be a few who may be fire chief or this, that, the other, but typically 90% are elected officials on that. And there's quite a large number of there. And again, the majority goes to the General Assembly again. And that's how that works.
Okay. Okay,
So
well, thank you for explaining that. I will say 90% doesn't cut it for me either, because I've tried to get in CalCities leadership. I've tried to get on committees. I am an elected official. I have been a member of the league for 5 years, and I have not been able to break through the culture of CalCities. You know what? I'm going to let Susan, Jay, you weren't at the, so I'm not going to call on you. I apologize, but because we're short on time, I'm going to let Susan, she was there, and Mike Griffith, because you were there also and a big part of this, if you want a quick wrap up comment, and then we're going to move on. So Susan Kandel, you have the floor.
Yes, so it seems like there's a big gap. So the resolutions committee is a subcommittee. I get that. And they will go and they hear it and they make an opinion on it. But if they don't support it, why is it still not brought to the General Assembly and have their policy committee, their resolutions committee say, well, we don't support this, but they still have to bring it. I mean, that's the process in our cities, right? Even if our staff doesn't support it, we still hear it. And that's the gap. And is there any way that we could somehow close that gap? They can bring their recommendation, but it still gets heard.
Right.
And that's the gap.
You're right on point, Susan. Thank you. Absolutely. Mike, you had a final comment?
Yeah, and I have to leave at 4:30, but again, thank you, Ali. Just maybe I hope I'm not misunderstanding the process, but yes, I know that the petition resolution did go to the resolutions committee. Resolutions committee made a recommendation that did go to the General Assembly. But my beef is not the fact that the resolutions committee made a recommendation. The fact that it did go to the General Assembly with the recommendation of the resolutions committee, but was not able to allow anyone representing that resolution to say one word to the General Assembly. That to me, am I wrong, Julie?
No, you're right. Not one word.
We weren't given the opportunity to say one, and I think this would never have, as Julie said earlier, this would never fly in a city council or local government environment. And for that to be allowed in CalCities really speaks to an environment that is not conducive to being transparent.
Thank you. Lynette was at I'm gonna let her have a quick word. And Ali, one of the things maybe, since this still seems to be kind of an open wound, and, we still hope to take something forward in September. And so there needs to be a clear understanding. I would ask you to invite all of us that were at that and participated to a meeting with Carolyn and Melanie and anyone else, the parliamentarian, anyone else who needs to work this through before September. That maybe we don't have time and we don't have all the staff people to resolve this here today. We're asking an awful lot of you to hear this, but we really do need, and all of us, and I know John is showing some holding back a bit, and Lisa and some of the others, and Lynette, or Lydia that was there also. So I would ask you to call a meeting and invite all of us to have an opportunity to speak directly to everyone who can resolve this. Lynette, go ahead with a quick comment, and then we're going to move on.
So, Ali, I wanted to thank you for also understanding what we have been going through. And I'm looking forward to attending the next conference in September. The one thing I would like and hope that you would send a message to all cities is that they should send all their council members who are interested in attending these conferences and not limit them and not restrict any council members from attending. So I hope you would also carry that message back. So I would like to make sure I can go to future conferences. So I really feel they're valuable. I learn a lot and I appreciate all that you do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone. We're going to move on. I myself kind of drafted some thoughts that I wanted to share with Ali, and we're not going to have time for full discussion on them. But what I'm going to do is kind of hit the list and ask Ali to maybe make notes, or I'll send you the list, because you're going to take it back. We know you're not going to be able to even have the resource to respond to all of this, but and then we can kind of pick some of it and have follow-up discussion. So one of the concerns that many of us were involved in, many of us have been on the policy committees. We just had the policy committee conference, and our first policy committee was many of us are on the housing and economic development, and that's where the topics that this group explores the most are discussed. So once again, there was the main topic was ONV, and because that failed resolution from the annual conference, our policy committee had a discussion, got an update, and it was a really valuable update where the CalCities attorney actually addressed some of the questions and unintended consequences and other issues that had kind of stalled it in the past. And I know I should have Susan talking about this, so I'll kind of set the stage. And okay, and then but there was great discussion, and we were so appreciative of Betsy, the CalCity attorney, because she was so informative and supportive of the changes that the ONV proponents, of which I am not one, but we have several on this call that are, had worked towards making. And it was such a positive analysis of where things were that it really changed minds of some of the policy committee members. Ultimately, we took a vote on whether CalCities would join in support of our neighborhood voices, which we feel is really important. It was kind of what we were asking with the resolution as well, in order to have the success that this really important movement needs. So it was a tough vote, and it went round and round in a lot of different ways with different motions, and it ended up at a 50-50 split. 50-50 split. We couldn't get that one more pushed over. There were others that that were absent, some who had sent their alternate, and if those alternates had been allowed to vote, we actually would have won that vote to support our neighborhood voices. But there was apparently yet another bylaw that we didn't realize, that the designated alternates weren't allowed to vote at committee, policy committee meetings. So it ended up being an absolute positive 50-50 split. Oh, heartbreaking. And after hours of discussion. So it was said that it would then go on to the board. And we later learned that when it went on to the board, it basically died. The board said, okay, we're done. And there's no, there was no next step or follow through. 50-50 split. We know that really, if it went to a full vote of city council members across the state, what our neighborhood voices is trying to do is retain local control or regain local control. Most city council members are city council members because they know how important it is to have the ability to make those decisions at the local level. So we know, and we know that the mission statement for CalCities is to advocate for local control. It's a one-sentence mission statement, and it's about supporting local control on behalf of the 480 cities across the state. So that's one of, I'm not opening this one up for discussion. Susan, if you want to address further, and then we'll move on. No, okay. So we would like that taken back. The fact that it then just died at the board level. And so that's one other issue. And if you want to address it, Ali, take the time. Otherwise, you can follow up on that.
I'll follow up on that.
Okay. All right. And then let's see, another one is that we want RENA reform. And I'm not going to ask for a discussion about this now because we're not going to have time. We would like CalCities to pick up and champion RENA reform. We know that there was the state legislative audit that made very clear the RENA numbers are wrong. And I don't care to address, we know that if there was a full audit of the RENA numbers, they would be found to be inflated significantly, but there are people who argue that the numbers are under, whatever. They're not, the audit proved that the numbers are wrong. The entire process is without integrity when you're dealing with numbers. That the independent legislative auditor said HCD cannot justify or even explain these fictional numbers. So it is a process without integrity. We need CalCities to stand up and demand a process with integrity. We also, with the RENA numbers, HCD, the way that they are processing our housing elements is without integrity. What they do and say to one city is entirely different than what they do to another city. The fact that they have demanded that the only tool that they will allow our cities to have now is objective design standards, right? Everything is ministerial down to objective design standards, and yet they do not have objective standards for this process. It is a process without integrity, and we need CalCities to be our champion and take it on. And I don't mean 8 years from now in the next cycle. It needs to be dealt with. The audit set very specific deadlines on when they made recommendations, they made requirements, and they were very specific dates. Many of the dates fell within the 2022, have already passed. Others were in early 2023. We don't want to wait 8 years for the reform that's needed. So we'd really like a response from CalCities on how they can help to advocate for the much needed RENA reform. Thank you. So then I'll move on to this kind of falls naturally to be the next one, and that is we would like a message out of CalCities of to our legislature. Eric, Eric, do you want to say the words that you wrote to me earlier today? Somebody else's voice would be welcome. Do you want to very quickly explain what you said as far as our legislature's agenda has failed? We need CalCities to stand up for the mission statement of local control. Eric, please share your words.
Well, I mean, there's been, you can't have helped notice in the last 2 months, there's been a raft of press and analysis of, we passed 100 bills in the last decade on, state housing bills. And yet there's no discernible impact on housing production. And, housing prices, homelessness, and inequality have continued to rise in the state. And there's been no indication that there's been an increase in housing production because of this. And so, even the Turner Center, which is, very, very opinionated on this topic, has looked at that and said, well, yeah, well, yeah. So I think fundamentally the promise that from Sacramento, and not everybody agreed with it, obviously, is that Sacramento said, we're going to take over local control. Okay. And the reason we're going to do that is that we have this, terrible problem with housing costs in California. And so we're going to take over local control, but in exchange, we will deliver lower housing costs and homelessness to Californians. And that was the deal. And, whether they expressed in exactly those terms or not, that is the way that every single state elected has pitched this, from Gavin Newsom down to our own assemblyman in my district, Mark Berman, right? Which is that, why do we need SB 330? Why do we need SB 820? Why do we need SB 9? Why do we need SB 50 and so forth? Well, because housing is too expensive in California and we need affordable housing. And so that's been the deal. And so essentially that has not worked, okay? Sacramento took local control. In the case of Builder's Remedy, extreme local control, all control, right? Sacramento took local control. They did the first one, but not the second. There's no impact on, there's no significant increase in housing production. They point to this project and that project and say, well, what about this project? What about that project? What were their projects before? The important thing is, did we change the rate? And the answer is no. There's no evidence of that. And so they did the first one, but not the second one. And I think we as cities need to go back to Sacramento and go, look, okay, you guys need to honor the deal, right? Either deliver us affordability and lower housing costs and lower homelessness, or else give us our zoning back. I think that's what we cities need to look at, right? Because that was the promise, right? And not all of us believed that it would happen. Some of us opposed it for this reason, some of us opposed it for that reason. But in the end, the state did the deal. They passed the deal. We will seize local zoning, local control, and in exchange, we will deliver affordability and lower homelessness. Okay. The second part of that has not happened. So time to revisit that. Give us affordability or give us control, one or the other. But we as cities need to go back and do that, because that's what our voters want.
Thank you, Eric, from Palo Alto. And that circles right back to, those were the words I wanted to hear from you. Give us our zoning back. I love that you said it that way. And isn't that ONV? Isn't that our neighborhood voices, Susan? Give us our zoning back. The legislative agenda has failed completely. Things are worse, not better. They will continue to get worse. It is all about supporting market rate and for-profit development, and it has been dishonest in the way that it was marketed under affordability and affordable housing, because we all are struggling with affordability for our residents and our communities. But none of what the legislature is doing is going to accomplish that, and CalCities needs to help us stand up to that. We want to be a part of that. But Ali, I know I sent you an article, and I think that spoke a lot to that. What the legislature is doing is completely wrong, and they are responding to their special interest funders and not to us and not to their constituents. And It is not a supply and demand issue. Building tons of market rate housing is never going to solve the affordability problem. And it, with the RENA unfunded mandates where we are told to build affordable housing without the funding. I say it too often, it annoys people, I'm sure. It annoys me to have to always repeat it. My city alone needs almost $3 billion in order to meet our unfunded affordable housing mandate. Without the funding, you know, their agenda is never going to work. It's time to rethink this. We need the CalCities to stand up to it, give us our zoning back. John, quick addition. Go ahead.
Well, you mentioned zoning, and clearly zoning is not the pathway to housing abundance or equity or affordable housing or the environment. And I think that's something we have to hammer away at. It's a myth. And unfortunately, or it is, this is really, despite the fact that a lot of these people dress themselves up as progressives, this is a basic market fundamentalist position. Get rid of CEQA, get rid of environmental protections, get rid of other rules that stand in the way from developers from doing whatever they want. And so we need to continue to debunk that. The other thing we need to be aware of is when we talk about HCD's RENA reform process now is a total joke. It is, and I'm on SCAG, one of the SCAG subcommittees, and we're all riled up about the fact that they're not saying who the special people, the experts were, but we know there's some YIMBYs there, but they didn't invite homeowners groups or groups like ours or other groups for feedback. And they're not revealing who they invited. They're not revealing the secret meetings. They're not revealing what they're talking about. And these are people who at the same time are saying that cities need to be more transparent about their housing elements and incorporating residents. They're doing the exact opposite. So I'm hoping SCAG, but I'm hoping ABAG, I'm hoping these other groups will also hammer away and nail them. The league should be involved. It should be all of our MPOs as well who are saying that this process is not legitimate. It is actually a farce.
Okay,
So,
John, I'm going to have to move on. I love it. Thank you. You're always wonderful. You know, Ali, wouldn't this be a great annual conference topic session? Wouldn't this be great for all of us to be able to actually say these words that no one ever allows us to say? Wouldn't it be great for everyone to hear the things that in that article that I sent you, because everybody's only heard this false narrative of just let's build, and we're going to have affordable housing again. No. People need to understand it, and we have to not be afraid to say it. Right now, literally the way the Attorney General and the laws are being written is to stifle our ability to actually speak. My city manager has absolute palpitations during our council meetings because I say these words, and they're afraid we're going to upset HCD, upset the state agenda, the leadership, and we need CalCities to make it so we actually have a voice and we're not afraid to talk. Real quick, Eric, go ahead.
I was just going to comment one other thing on this. I mean, the whole Sacramento agenda is conditioned on the idea that the thing that's standing in the way of housing development is obstruction from local regulations. And if you only got rid of those, then the private sector, and I think this is what people miss, is that there's a key dependency on the private sector implied in here that nobody talks about. The assumption is you get rid of all the obstacles, the private sector will build all the housing necessary to meet demand, and prices will fall to the point where Californians can afford them. That's the unstated assumption. We think, actually it's not true, which is why the Sacramento agenda hasn't worked, okay? We looked at this a few years ago and said, the real problem here is that a growing economy produces both high-wage jobs and low-wage jobs. And the private sector will only build housing for the high income earners, okay? That's why, that's always been that way, okay? That's why American cities have tried to make affordable public housing work for so many years, okay? Because the economy produces high-wage jobs and low-wage jobs, and the private developers will only serve the high-wage earners. What's different now is that the difference between the high wage earners and the low wage earners is so high. The inequality has grown so high, okay, that there's no way the low wage earners can catch up, can climb the pyramid by the usual methods of more people per household, moving a little farther away, and so forth. the pyramid is too tall and thin for them to climb. So we did in Palo Alto, and other people have done too. And I think this is more indicative of the right direction. As we said, where is all this wealth and inequality coming from? It's coming from the tech sector, okay? I mean, it's just the way the post-industrial economy works. So last year we put a tech tax, a tax on big tech companies to fund affordable housing and transportation in Palo Alto. And you know, that's what it's going to take, okay? We're going to have to do other stuff than simply deregulate, okay? Deregulation won't work if the problem is the private sector will only build housing for the top third of the income pyramid, okay?
Okay, and
But I
thank
think
you for sharing that.
League of Cities doesn't have to go sell that. League of Cities just has to go to Sacramento and go, look, keep the deal. Give us affordability or give us our zoning back. You choose, okay? But give us one of those.
And I'll say, or give us our local control, because it's more than just zoning. And thank you, Eric, so much. And I've asked Eric to come and talk to us in the near future about his Palo Alto's business tax, because that's what our legislators are unwilling to do. They are unwilling to piss off their special interest funders by taxing them, or by making real laws that are really going to help with affordability. We need to have real conversations, Ali. And so that leads me to the next thing. I have two more on my list here, and I know we're over time, but the annual conference, we really need to have at the annual conference an opportunity to have real discussions, and we don't. I have written proposals Ali, hear me, year after year. I have written proposals that have not been accepted. And you know what? I would be absolutely thrilled if mine wasn't accepted, but they gave Jason the responsibility of taking the topics that need to be discussed and have them discussed. The topics are awful at the annual conference because they're written by special interests. And so this year, not only did I write and have my CALE's proposal talking about the things that we're talking about right now, it was denied. And I put some pretty good speakers on there. It wasn't me talking, it was people who really can talk to these issues, and it was denied. And so I read every and rated. I volunteered. It took a lot of hours to read and rate every proposal, because I wanted to find out what kind of proposals I'm missing out to, because the ones that show up at the conference certainly aren't worthy. So I was horrified to see how many of the proposals are written by California YIMBY this, YIMBY that, and they're all very, I don't want to say pro-housing because John will correct me.
Pro-developer.
What's that?
Pro-developer.
Well, that's not it either, because John, it's more the, John, what's the term that I'm supposed to use?
Pro-force density.
Pro-density. That's
Pro-force density and anti-zoning, anti-urban planning.
Anti-urban planning, that's one. Let's write that down. That's anti-urban planning. So I read every single proposal in all the different categories, and there were none that will replace what we're talking about here. There are none that will allow us to have real discussions. There were none that will educate the other electeds about that audit that most people don't know about. There are none that are coming up that I read anyway. Jovita threw one in. It wasn't very thoroughly developed, I think, is probably what, but Jovita and my topic were the only ones that would have come close to addressing the real thing. So I'm going to give Susan and Jovita a minute to talk, and then there's just one really quick thing that I'm going to add. So Jovita, go.
There should be some sort of policy. There should be a policy where you don't take more than one or maybe two, topics from special interests, right? That should be, if your electeds are writing in topics, those should absolutely carry a priority. So whatever process you guys are doing to pick these things needs to be completely revamped and probably voted on by the members, probably voted on by all the CalCities members.
And yet that would be, I mean, and not very many people will take the time to even read and do what I did. I tried to get a lot of you to jump on and do some of the reading, and I understand. everybody's taking their different real important part and above and beyond what we're already doing at our cities. But the amount of time that I put into reading all those proposals, not very many of us have the time to do that. I really didn't. But
Yeah. But I agree.
the proposals are written by law firms. The proposals are written by I think, by some of the special interest. I had anyway. I really am curious to see what got accepted when ours did not. And again, I could understand that they might think Julie isn't a career person in planning, so we don't want her to be the one. I would have been happy if somebody had taken the topic, taken the concern, Reno reform, that was the topic, Reno reform. What would be better to talk about at the annual conference? But it won't be. And Jovita, go ahead. What was your topic?
Just
Remind
real
me.
quick, I agree that I feel like the topics are not for us, they're for whoever the sponsors are. And I do it during my day job. I pay to play to get more of a banner sign or more time with my customer. I get why you do it, but I think we need to relook at it, because that's what it's looking like to me. It's a pay to play. These law firms, these agencies, they do a lot of sponsorship, they do a lot of dollars, and that's why they trump us, who are supposed to have the stronger voice. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm going to go this time, but if they don't start becoming things that I can actually take back and use on the dais, I don't see the point of having these conferences anymore, right? It's like, let's talk about real case scenarios that we're all going through and how do we better manage our cities? Let's talk about our pension obligations. Let's talk about when we deny projects and we have to go to court, like we just won against a big developer out here. Let's talk about those kinds of things that decisions we have to make on the dais. Because there is nothing that I have gone to and sat through. I'm like, I can take back and do something with that. They're usually this one-off, doesn't apply to anybody else kind of scenario. So I get that you have sponsors that you have to make happy, but if we're not learning, it's just not worth it anymore.
Okay, and in fairness, I will say there is every year a good one on the pension issue, a good one that ends by saying, and there's nothing we can do. So, but I always go to that one. And I always get a little tidbit here or there of frustration mostly, but okay, so I'm gonna throw one more out, and then Ali, anything that you that whole soup of issues to throw back at us, I would love to hear. So the last one is a brief one, but was brought to me today before the meeting. And that is for those of us who go to the conferences and policy committees. And this last one, the fact that it was an in-person policy meeting, literally a 3-hour meeting that I had to fly into Ontario, stay overnight in a hotel, 2 Uber rides, Lyft rides to and from the airport, a big expense and a big time suck for me. Although I enjoyed, I do enjoy the in-person and getting to see some of my good friends like Lydia and Lynette were there, and a few other people that I hadn't seen for a while, but they should not be in person. And they said, okay, well, we'll compromise. We'll just do the one in person and the rest of them will be remote. No, for a 3-hour meeting, no, I don't want to miss that 3-hour meeting because I'm dedicated to the topic. And I figure that's the meeting they'll talk about ONV and I won't be there. And so, Susan Candel, please weigh in because you were concerned about this.
Oh, absolutely. It's just, they should be at least hybrid, if not, fully remote. That would be great.
Yeah. I mean, I do enjoy the networking. I do enjoy in person. And Ali, for all of you who don't know, Ali, this year as our president, he has traveled up and down the state, being at everybody's meetings. it's been Herculean, Ali. I've been amazed to see you everywhere we go. And I know you've been in a million places that I haven't been this year. So thank you for what you've been doing for us. Thank you for your support. I know you share our concerns. I know it's not fair to dump so much on you. One more that wasn't on my list, but your vice, you in December is the end of your term. Is that correct?
This September at the annual conference,
Right after the
I was supposed to hand over the gavel to Dan Para at the before the General Assembly, but I will not do that until the General Assembly is over. So I will be, typically it is the president, incoming president presides the General Assembly. But I presided the General Assembly last time, but due to the change, this change, I will still preside the General Assembly this year. And then I'm done with General Assembly, then I'll hand over the gavel.
Okay. All right. Well, can you give us any insight on our next president, whether he will be someone who will be inclined to work with us? Do you have any feedback for us on that?
So certainly, first of all, the next president, his name is Daniel Para. He is also the mayor for the city of Fowler. And he has been engaged with our great organization, League of California Cities, for well over 15 years. He also serves on Latino caucus, and he's very engaged as well. Thank you, Julie, for your comments. When I actually came to this role, my goal was to really focus on our mission statement, which is defend and fight and uphold local control through education and advocacy. But I also felt without engagement, it's not possible. So my goal has been engagement, engagement, and engagement, and being everywhere. It starts from the leader and really leading it from the front, being with you, being with our all 16 divisions, caucuses, departments, and really hearing and understanding their concerns. You know, I'll share this with you. I used to work with American Express Financial Advisors as a vice president. It was easy to change things in the corporate world. But when I came to this world, which I love, by the way, and especially working here as a president, it's very difficult to change the course of the ship. As big the ship is, as difficult it is. But I'm just sharing that on a good and a positive note, that I'm extremely blessed, I'm extremely honored, and thank you all for your confidence to support local control and standing side by side. And we are all on the same page when it comes to RENA numbers. We are all on the same page when it comes to issues with regards to, you know, let us loosen up with state legislatures, the development, and really, especially on zoning. I'm with you, we're all together in this. And giving back local control is absolutely the key. We want to actually really take this to state legislatures always, and really there has to be a balance that needs to be struck. But local control is something that we all stand for. And I personally would always be there for local control, whether I'm present or not. I am absolutely there to fight for us, to be with us, and fighting for us is being in these trenches. So with that, thank you so very much for and I've made some copious notes as all of you were speaking. I'll certainly will email you, Julie, some of the things, but my message is with regards to RENA, with regards to zoning, I am totally with you. And thank you for putting this out there, that CalCities should be a champion. Certainly, I'll take that back to the staff, especially Carolyn. That's excellent point. I'll be happy to take that back to Carolyn, how we can incorporate that. But thank you. This has been an absolutely wonderful session. I've learned a lot. I've taken back so much, but I also want to actually also highlight a comment that was made earlier regarding encouraging other council members. I also ask you to encourage your council. Everyone is invited. It's not the person who's only the voting delegate. No, everyone is invited. The more, the merrier. they should hear. I've also asked the governor to actually be part of this conference to hear us, how important the local control is. And I want everyone to absolutely be there. That's my hope and that's my wish. But with that, thank you all so very much.
Thank you so much, Ali. And I'm looking forward to follow up. Again, I really think it would be great if a meeting could be arranged where we could come and share some concerns.
Sure.
These concerns, but we really want a good workshop for the conference. And we know, tell them to pull out my proposal. All right, Ali, thank you so much.